During the development phase of CSS, developers were creating layouts and web pages with the help of floats and positioning, until Flexbox was introduced, which changed the complete layouting of elements on the web page. In order to use the Flexbox, we need a container and some of the children elements in our HTML file, and then in CSS file, we give the container display as flex. Now, this will create two axes, that is main axis and the cross axis. And we can see that our children's items are no longer placed on top of one another because the display flex is positioning the items on the main axis. And in CSS Flexbox, by default, the main axis is horizontal, which is why our elements are positioned horizontally. And if we want, then we can also change the direction of the main axis vertically by using flex direction. If we set the flex direction to column, then the main axis will become vertical. And if we set it to row, then the main axis will be horizontal. And by default, the flex direction is set to row. Now that we know about the main axis and cross axis, we can align our items along the main axis by using justify content. The default value that justify content has is flex start. But if we set the justify content to the flex end, then our items will be pushed to the end, and the center will push the item in the middle of the container. Space between will evenly distribute the entire space between the items. Space around is something similar to space between, but in this case, the edges also have given some spacing. And at last, space evenly will be distributed all the space between the container and the items. So the justify content is used for aligning the items on main axis, but we can also align it on the cross axis using the align items property. If we set the value of align items to flex start, it will place our items at the start of the cross axis, whereas if we use flex end, it will place items at the end of the cross axis. And center, as the name suggests, it will center our item in the middle of the cross axis. By default, all the flex items will try to fit in one line when we try to add more items to our container. As you can see, all the items get squeezed in order to fit in one line. So to fix this problem, we use the flex wrap property. By default, the value of flex wrap is set to no wrap, but we can change it to wrap, which will allow the flex item to wrap around when there is no more space available for another item to fit in. So when we use the wrap property, we also get access to one more property, which is the align content property. But the point that we need to keep in mind is that we should not get confused between the align content and align items properties, because align content only works when we have flex wrap set to wrap and have items wrapping. This property allows us to align everything on the cross axis. So if we set align content to center, then all the items get aligned at the center. Flex end will place the items at the end. Space between will provide equal space between items. Space around will provide some space at the start and at the end. Flex start will place items at the start. We can also add a gap between each item. By using the gap property, we can add a gap between each item like this. Now, in order to understand some more important properties of the Flexbox, let me first remove most of our child elements and leave only 3 elements in our HTML file. And in CSS, let's remove the flex wrap and align content, because for now, we don't need it. Now let's see another property, that is the flex grow property. Let's select our second item with its class name and use the flex grow property and set its value to 1. The flex grow property accepts a unitless value, and what it does is it provides the remaining space to the chosen item. So if we use flex grow on item 1, then it will grow by filling up the remaining space. And same will happen to item 3 if we set it to the flex grow property. And if all 3 items were given the flex grow to 1, then all 3 will equally grow as per the remaining space. Now let's see the flex shrink property. It also accepts a unitless value, and it defines how fast one item will shrink compared to the other items. So if we set the flex shrink value of 6 for the second item, then we can see that the second item is shrinking faster compared to the other items. And if we set the value to 0, then the item will refuse to shrink at all. Now let's see our last flex property, which is the flex basis property. Flex basis is used to define the size of the item, like width. If an item has some size already defined to it, but if you want to change it, then you can use the flex basis to override the size. For example, our item has a size of 200 pixels. Then we can override it by setting the value of 350 pixels to flex basis. And if we set the value to 0, then we are shrinking the item to its maximum. So this is all you need to know about the Flexbox for now to start your layouting journey in CSS with Flexbox. Now, if you have enjoyed this video and learned something new, then consider leaving a like to this video and also subscribe to our channel. And if you have any queries, feel free to leave a comment below.